Hi everyone! I wrote a research essay about potential limitations for personalized learning software, and I would like to share it with you. I have cited all of my sources below, and I hope you enjoy. 2011 Obama White House fact sheet heralded an era for well-designed instructional software that holds the promise of personalized learning to supplement school instruction and improve student outcomes. Although it noted the challenges of marketing to the myriad of school districts across the nation and the lack of credible evaluation. This document spoke from a time when the annual venture capital funding for education technology in the United States was only $500 million. A decade later, in 2021, education technology venture capital funding accumulated $8.3 billion. Driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, districts and schools switched to remote learning, while the free market developed a multitude of education technology products ranging all grades and subjects. In this mad dash for innovation to help overworked teachers in an unfamiliar instructional space, the concurrence of technology product profitability and hope for educational access and equity has led to an ever-growing supply alongside ravenous demand. One growth area in education technology is personalized learning, going by a variety of names, among them self-paced study, differentiation, and individualized learning and instruction, and using a variety of technologies, artificial intelligence and machine learning, for example. The proclaimed mission of personalized learning technology is to ensure that every student has access to appropriately scaffolded content and support. Personalized learning often implements predictive technology and data science, integrating content, pedagogy, and leveling. For example, Edmentum's Exact Path product, with content spanning grades K through 12 and used in over 2,400 school districts, advertises that the software can quickly close discrete skill gaps and propel learning with an adaptive and individualized learning path. This personalized learning platform bridges instruction and assessment on an individual basis, made possible through machine learning technology using student data to determine growth areas and achievement. Meanwhile, overworked teachers and understaffed districts, especially during pandemic online learning, see this adaptive virtual technology as a valuable resource to supplement instruction. Even throughout the transition to in-person learning, these artificial intelligence-powered tools were instructional aids, allowing teachers to spend less time on laborious personalization and more time on fostering engaging classroom experiences and higher-order thinking skills. Additionally, personalized learning platforms can increase equity for students by providing additional curated supports to encourage their achievement. The aspirations of equity and efficiency have helped to grow artificial intelligence and data collection in the education sector. But perhaps there is more to consider than simply technological and corporate solutionism to improve educational outcomes for students. While we are at the beginning of this new school year, I urge districts and school leaders to be intentional about the annual purchase of personalized learning products that are not a panacea for learning loss. I want to question the ethics of for-profit companies accessing and using student data while advertising themselves as the solution to the drought of sufficient personnel, time, and physical resources in school systems. As one who believes access to opportunity and quality education should be a right, I find deep conflict with companies paid by school districts for their services, when there is often no substantial evidence of program efficacy, with reliance on access to and use of student data, alongside lagging policy for oversight and data protection. I have worked as an educator for a few years, both internationally and domestically, and although I have not used digital personalized learning tools in my pedagogy, I understand that today's paradigm for teaching often includes a supplement of online tools. I personally have grown to distrust for-profit companies until shown I can believe in their intentionality to reduce inequity and subvert the hierarchy of class, race, and power. For now, I remain distrustful of for-profit companies in the education sector. Looking from the outside, I want to use my discomfort as an instigator for an investigation into digital platforms which promise shiny outcomes stemming from the black box of their inner workings. I recognize that these platforms do fill a need in schools, particularly for individual instruction. The purpose of many personalized learning platforms is to increase academic achievement. Edmentum's Exact Path description states that direct instruction and activities use a mastery learning approach to adapt to each student's needs. By corresponding to state standards, the program espouses test-based assessment as an indicator of student success. This standards-based curriculum upholds the status quo of taught information, extending neocolonialism into the digital space without redefining intentionally pluralistic content for our diverse students. Students, meanwhile, are often not brought into the conversation to choose pedagogy and content for themselves, even though teachers might use personalized learning platforms. Although this is common in our teacher-led grammar of schooling, the institutional norm of our education system, digital personalized learning platforms are teacher-chosen and student-completed in an online dimension. I began to question the ethics of perceived student efficacy and autonomy with these platforms after co-presenting on data analytics about curricular products purchased by a small school district in Massachusetts, intentionally kept anonymous. We found that the most expensive high school product was Edmentum's ExactPath personalized learning software. When the district's chief financial officer heard this information, they compared the large price tag to the multitude of student complaints about the software. This comment piqued my interest because it affirmed my prior notion that students are forced to use educational platforms regardless of their feelings toward them. Upon seeing that initial Google searches for Edmentum were positive from generic software rating sites, I hope to find student opinions about this software on the internet. Some of the democratic internet spaces with youth include Reddit and TikTok, and I researched there to find unfiltered views from students about this software. The text and video posts I found are made by students frustrated enough to make posts and old enough to have access to social media to provide a snapshot of student thoughts. I am not citing the content directly because I don't feel comfortable sharing screen names or post links of minors, but from a scroll through the subreddit r/Edmentum and #Edmentum on TikTok, I saw quite a few posts about Edmentum software, although ExactPath was not specified. A common theme was student frustration with online school using this platform, some going so far as to blame Edmentum for mental health issues or feeling behind in their classes. Students also felt like the content was taught too quickly or too slowly, making students feel anxious or bored. One teacher made a satirical video about using Edmentum when they don't want to teach, but then they clarified in a comment that they don't like the platform. Another recurring theme is that students did not feel they learned anything from their lessons on the platform, and they felt like they needed to augment instruction by resorting to cheating, finding answers on online databases, or creating study groups to share assignments. What are the ethical ramifications of schools using a platform that gives a perverse incentive for students to use whatever means necessary to complete their work, even if it compels cheating? Are students benefited by finishing assignments to receive their good grades, or are they pushed to make morally great choices to conserve their mental well-being? Furthermore, academic achievement is viewed through platforms as a single-dimensional metric of completion for success, instead of a complex and student-driven assessment of content mastery. Holistically, it seems that personalized learning, through comments about this platform in particular, is not adequately supporting, empowering, and inspiring young learners. Meanwhile, there's still a question about if for-profit companies are effectively held accountable for the sizable responsibility of gathering and using student data. According to FERPA, personally identifiable student information is protected from unauthorized disclosure. Students and parents retain some control over information shared with schools, and also entities falling under the school official exemption, organizations that perform a service under school provision. For-profit companies providing services for schools and requiring access to student data for logins or accumulation of data from student use are held to both FERPA and COPPA standards, which is additional protection for students under the age of 13. These laws are enforced by the Federal Trade Commission, and while the law delineates regulations, the verbiage is vague with room for interpretation. Although there are overseeing entities with certifications and pledges for the protection of student data, such as the Student Privacy Pledge from the Future Privacy Forum, others have noted these entities' inconsistencies and insufficient protections for students and parents. In the case of Edmentum, a signatory of the Student Privacy Pledge 2020, the privacy policy ensures that student data will never be used for unauthorized educational purposes or marketing materials, but the platform cannot guarantee the security of information provided over the internet or stored in our databases, and will not be responsible for breaches of security beyond their reasonable control. And it reserves the right to retain data on backed up, electronically stored records, the destruction of which would be unreasonably burdensome, which codifies a loophole about their data retention. These stipulations inspired me to research their leadership team. While about half of their executive leadership team is female, only 1 person out of 11 is a perceived person of color. Most of the policy and product leads are white men. While Edmentum states that diversity and inclusion strengthen us, if diversity is not reflected in their leadership and also a multitude of students across the country feel frustrated with their platform, perhaps they are called to increase representation and understanding of the plurality of student experiences. With loopholes in their privacy policy, Edmentum is a case study of a for-profit company producing personalized learning software used in classrooms around the country. District and school leaders should sufficiently vet each company's student data policies. Ensure that teachers, students, and guardians know what data is gathered by these companies, and question if these expensive products are improving the educational experience of students. Between the ethical considerations of for-profit companies' data responsibility and the ramifications of products leading students to their own ethical conundrums around cheating, there is cause for concern about the personalized learning products used by districts and schools. The onus is on districts and schools to ensure that companies falling under the school official exemption sufficiently protect student data, while teachers and students enjoy the products purchased with public money, in the case of public schools. While I am apprehensive to trust providers, I believe that the priority to individualize the educational experience for students requires their voices present in the decision-making process. Although districts and schools would need to buy a test version of platforms to gather student opinions, for example, there should be pilot programs and assessment before spending a significant portion of school budgets on the full platform. And with student voices, hopefully schools, districts, and for-profit companies can be held accountable for the quality of instruction, working toward a pluralistic decision-making body, setting a new status quo for student empowerment and their academic success. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Bye.